Get ready to reimagine the future of humanity and unlock your true potential. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, hosted by Dr. David Gruder, an internationally renowned integrative psychologist, human potential expert, author, and social change catalyst, as he delves into the most urgent issues of our time. With the world facing unprecedented challenges and social and political divides growing deeper, it's time to take action. Each episode of this groundbreaking series will empower you with invaluable insights, strategies, and tools to heal these divisions and restore personal freedom and societal well-being. Whether you're a concerned citizen, a courageous leader, an influential figure, or an ambitious entrepreneur, Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will guide you on a transformative journey. Discover your unique role in creating a brighter future for yourself and society at large. Dr. David Gruder will draw upon his extensive knowledge and experience to provide practical solutions for shaping the world we live in. With his passionate exploration of social change, he will help you navigate through the complexities of our time and inspire you to make a meaningful impact. So, prepare yourself for an eye-opening experience as we delve deep into the heart of the matter. Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours will challenge your perspectives, ignite your imagination, and equip you with the tools you need to reimagine and redefine the world around you. The time to transform our future is now. Join us on this incredible journey and enter a new era of possibility. For more information on Dr. David Gruder and the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, visit www.rhfy.ca. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, where together, we create a brighter tomorrow. Now, here is the host of Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, Dr. David Gruder.
Well, welcome back to the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. I'm your host, Dr. David Gruder, the polymath of human potential and societal psychotherapist who equips leading-edge leaders, influencers, helping professionals, and you with impactful resilience that makes it possible for humanity's most spiritually elevated future to at last emerge. The title of this episode is Escaping the Toxic Spiral of Cancel Culture through Reimagined Leadership. Sick of escalating attacks and exclusion? Cancel culture's grip on our personal lives, leadership, workplaces, society, and politics. My guest for this episode, Tim Kelley, will illuminate why cancel culture is rising at this time in society's evolution. The answer will likely surprise you, and will offer sanity-restoring solutions. Discover how to rebound from cancellation, redeem others who have been canceled, and resiliently rise beyond polarization to forge humanity's next leap forward. Now is the time. Forging wisdom in the chaos, meet Tim Kelley, a global change expert and agent who is reshaping leadership for a higher purpose. Founder of the True Purpose Institute and author of True Purpose, the book, Tim's guided thousands of leaders, from Alibaba to Oracle CEOs to government ministers, in crafting and actualizing their transcendent visions. His purpose-driven methods, honed over 2 decades, have elevated Fortune 500s and NGOs, which is non-government organizations, across 30-plus countries. A retired naval officer with an MIT degree, Tim's here to spark genius in repairing divides created by cancel culture and illuminating how leaders who have been damaged by cancel culture trauma can not merely recover, but renew themselves. Welcome to Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours, Tim.
Thank you, Dr. Gruder. Delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you. And in this first segment, we're going to look at why cancel culture is so common today and symptoms people experience but might not know are key ingredients in creating cancel cultures. But first, Tim, how did you initially get interested in cancel culture and specifically in helping canceled leaders recover from cancel culture trauma?
It was an unexpected outgrowth of my own purpose in life. As someone who does purpose work for government and business leaders and organizations, I do my best to take my own medicine. So I'm always trying to make sure my purpose is up to date and follow it and stuff like that.
I resemble
And
that too. Yeah.
right, it's a lot of work.
Uh-huh. It is.
um, for many for decades now, I've been really focusing on how do we transform our leaders so that we get better, more evolved leadership. Because people complain about leaders, they complain about organizations, they complain about governments, all this kind of stuff, and there are people running those things. And so if we want those things to work better, we have to upgrade the systems and we have to upgrade the people. And I'm working on both. Anyway, I was working on the people, and it came out of an inquiry into my purpose of how do I find. So here's a little problem, which is many of the leaders who are in power have a natural disincentive to change, and have a natural disincentive to change the system that they're in power over, because that system elevated them, right? So if I'm in charge, I benefit from being in charge of this system at this time. I get recognition, I get money, I get power, all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of like sawing off those cartoons where that you saw off the branch that you're sitting on. It's a little like sawing off the branch you're sitting on, or at least it feels that way if you're a leader and you start trying to transform the system that made you a leader. Now, in practice, if you do a good job of that, it actually elevates you further, but that's not what the fear says, right?
Right, right. That's the
And
paradox.
that's the paradox. Now, and so I've been very effective at convincing some of those people to undergo profound transformations, as you have too. Um, but then it came to me through my own purpose methods that the leaders who've been canceled have way less to lose. And so they have a very powerful incentive to undergo a transformational process in order to regain the power, influence, money, et cetera, that they've lost. And if they keep doing what they're currently doing, it's probably not going to work. And so, it's an interesting way of finding leaders who are ready for change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminds me of an old saying about mostly people change not because they see the light, but because they feel the heat. And
Exactly.
for a leader, there's not too much more in the way of heat than being canceled. So,
Right.
thank you for that. And so, in this episode's next segment, we'll get into root causes of what we'll
Sure.
cover during this segment. But first, why has cancel culture become so common today? And what are the most common challenges businesses, other organizations, governments, societies, etc., have that tend to turn them into cancel cultures?
Right, right. So there's the cancel culture is just sort of out in the collective. It's not necessarily operating inside of an organization, though it can be. Um, and so it's not really possible to control the phenomenon, like to prevent it from happening. In the sense that we can't say, okay, well, I'm going to fire all the people in my company who are cancel culture types, and then there won't be any cancel culture around here. Doesn't work like that, right? Because the customers, the shareholders, there's all these other stakeholder groups that you can't entirely control who could decide to cancel you. And the difficulty is that then this creates a culture of fear in businesses, in leaders, in politicians who are terrified of saying or doing the wrong thing. And that impairs their ability to function, because you know what fear does to the brain, David, right? So you
Yep.
get this little tiny amygdala triggering, and one of its favorite moves is to shut off the cerebral cortex, so all your strategic thinking and relationship and problem solving skills and everything are suddenly gone. And now you still have to lead this thing that you're leading, but you're afraid of saying or doing anything. It's like this feeling of sort of like gingerly walking through a minefield. And so we get less capable, less intelligent leaders by subjecting them to the fear that they could be canceled at any given time.
Hmm. Right. Absolutely. And I'd like to underscore a couple of things you were just saying. Um, the, the whole notion that our company or our organization doesn't do cancel culture or believes in collaboration or fill in the blank with high intentions, that doesn't in any way mean that people who come into that organization haven't come in already infected by cancel culture mentality or coercion or compromise strategies rather than collaboration strategies, etc. And
Mhm.
or that they come in with critical thinking skills really well developed for that matter.
Right.
And so leaders of organizations, as you're saying, can either complain about how there are no good people out there, or they can elevate their selection process along certain lines that go beyond what we'll cover in this show. But
Sure.
they can make better selections, but they also have to take responsibility for filling in gaps in on the human level that
Mhm.
people come in with that they don't even necessarily know that they have. And that's really important because when that doesn't happen, what you're talking about in the way of reptile brain animal reactivity is what happens. And
Yep.
just for the sake of the audience, to clarify that just a wee bit further, when people get agitated, escalated, stressed, fearful, anxious beyond a certain level, or angry beyond a certain level, what happens is that their body generates massive amounts of stress chemicals like norepinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, which shoot straight to the brain. And when those flood the brain, what happens is that the thinking part of the brain gets shut off and the survival part, the animal part, the reptile amygdala part of the brain gets activated. And when we are in reactivity animal mode, we only know the following reactions. Our repertoire is limited to fight, freeze, um, like a deer in the headlights, run away, flee, faint, play possum, play dead, hoping that the threat will pass, or fawn, which means to give in, to make nice with
Right.
the
Praise the
people.
person who's attacking you or whatever, right?
Exactly. And none of those are response styles. Those are reactivity survival styles.
Yep.
So, thank you. I wanted to underline all of that for our audience.
Yep.
So, what symptoms do you see that set up the kind of cancel culture that leads to leaders getting canceled?
Yep. So, so the one of the big issues that drives cancel culture is political polarization. And let me say that the some of the goals of cancel culture are actually quite admirable, which is to say that sometimes there are people who are causing harm and are not being held accountable for it, and that the larger systems, the legal systems, political systems, etc., fail us and don't stop people from doing what they're doing. And vulnerable people are left at the effect of powerful people without any protection. And so
Good,
that's
right,
one of the goals of cancel culture, is to hold the powerful accountable for their impact. And that's
good.
actually a perfectly fine goal to have.
Yes, and we're gonna have to go to break shortly.
Mhm.
What you're pointing out is that good intentions often backfire into harmful implementation.
Yep. Yep.
And so we're gonna go into more of that in a couple of moments. The rest of this episode dives into the root causes of what Tim and I have been discussing, what to look for in a solution, and Tim's version of that solution. After a short break, my eye-opening guest, cancel culture healing expert Tim Kelley, and I will explore less recognized reasons behind how cancel culture emerges and creates toxic spirals that take down leaders and others. I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we will be back momentarily. Welcome back. Before the break, my guest, Tim Kelley, told us about symptoms that create cancel cultures, at least some of them. And in this segment, as you know, we'll delve into under-recognized root causes of cancel culture and the toxic targeting that it perpetuates. Tim, let's keep going with what we were talking about in the first segment. What are
Yeah.
what are some of those most overlooked root causes? Let's go further.
Right. So the obvious one is the political polarization, where some group identifies a narrative that is the correct way to view things and then starts punishing and excluding anyone who doesn't subscribe to that narrative. That's the result. The question is, how did we get there? Because it wasn't always thus, right? That wasn't always the case in our public narratives. Um, there's two root causes I want to talk about. One is something called spiral dynamics. It's a lovely system I encourage people to study. I'm not going to give a whole overview of it, but
Yeah,
there's different.
thank you for that, and I agree. It's a
Yeah,
lovely framework.
and a lot of research was done, and so there are different colors indicating different stages of collective consciousness. And the three that we're playing with right now, at least here in the United States, and this is true in a lot of countries, but not necessarily all, um, is the blue level, which is the hierarchical level. That's trust in the church or God or government or the company or something like that, that they know better. The ones who are in charge know better, and we owe them our loyalty. That's a very old meme, a very old cultural sense of things that's in less favor now than it was in, say, the Middle Ages. Um, then the one after that, which is more recent, is the sense of everyone for themselves. Is sort of compete for the bonus, and make create your own small business. You're the author of your own results. A very sort of laissez-faire economics is this way. Chicago School of Economics and Milton Friedman, these folks just sort of sink or swim, right? And you hear a lot of that from sort of traditional conservative Republicans arguing that point of view. We shouldn't give people welfare; they should lift themselves up by their bootstraps. And let me say, there's value to all of these perspectives. They all have a point.
Yes.
The one that's the most obvious author of cancel culture is a more recent one, which is the green meme. And the green one, which primarily shows up on the progressive left, but not exclusively, is the one that's concerned about the environment and certain underserved populations being excluded and discriminated against and not having the opportunity that some other populations do. Um, so that brings a sort of sense of compassion, which is different than that prior level, that everyone for themselves, which is useful. And there's a lot of protest and these sorts of things that go on, and much of it well-meaning. But the cancel culture is a direct result of this meme, because this particular view of the world, although it's espousing inclusion, it's not actually fully inclusion. Let's hear from everyone, but not the rich people. It's their fault, right? Let's include everyone, but not the white men. This sort of thing. So there's always a culprit and a victim in this view. It's the last win-lose level in the spiral dynamic system. And so this is where cancel culture came from as a current phenomenon in the United States. It's not happening in the same way everywhere around the world yet. um, but that these folks will identify correctly a group that's being discriminated against or underserved or doesn't have the same opportunities, but then look for someone to blame and then attack and try to take out that person. So it's a basic distrust with anyone who has power or resources, that they must mean ill. If they're wealthy or if they're powerful, they must be evil. And so then looking for targets from that belief frame. And that group has a narrative that you have to espouse. And if you don't espouse that narrative, then you're evil and must be destroyed. And that's a very clear sense of where it's coming from.
Yes. So again, I want to unpack this because you've said a delicious mouthful, and I want to make sure we don't leave anyone in the audience behind. So bear with me as I do this, and jump in if I paraphrase inaccurately. Uh, we start with this conventional hierarchical trust the people in power and be loyal to the people in power and defer your own self sovereignty to the people in power. That mentality,
Mhm.
and that connects in psychology to something that a lot of people, even in the psychology field, haven't heard about, which is something called the just world hypothesis. And the
Mm.
just world hypothesis holds that people in power are, exceptions aside, people in power are out for our best interests, that they can be trusted, that their intentions are good, and that they'll
And
operate
they're in
on
power
behalf.
for a reason, right? That's where something like the divine right of kings came from.
Right.
Right.
And that's the just world hypothesis, that the majority of the greatest generation, the people who grew up prior to World War II, came of age in World War II, and then were basically running things in the 1950s. Predominantly, they had that just world hypothesis mindset. I know my dad did for sure. And then we get the everyone for themselves, I'm just being me, and if you don't like it, tough luck on you, that's your problem. No accountability, laissez-faire at the extreme end,
Right.
laissez-faire
If I have
without.
money and you don't, then go get money.
Right,
Right.
laissez-faire
Don't complain
without
to me.
ethical guardrails.
Right.
And so that's the narcissism approach, and that then leads to a rebellion where the cost to that narcissism, in terms of the planet's well-being, and in terms of people being underserved and excluded, and wanting to provide compassion and opportunity, that leads to the opposite of the just world hypothesis, which is the unjust world hypothesis. They're out to get us. They can't be trusted.
Right. If
And
they're in power, they must have cheated to get there.
right. And cancel culture grows out of a war between these two polarized groups over who can't be trusted, who is the enemy. So there's cancel mentality that comes from both political extremes, cancel mentality that comes from the extreme right, from the extreme left. It just varies in terms of who they're trying to cancel.
And what the narrative is that you're required to subscribe to in order to avoid cancellation.
Right, right, right. So we've replaced what should be a universal principle around kindness and collaboration and addressing issues, not assassinating characters. We've replaced that with this cancel mindset.
Yep. There's another less obvious that not that that last one was obvious, but it's obvious to people like you and me who study collective psychology and stuff. But there's an even less obvious factor,
Good.
which is the rise of feminine power. Now, I'm not talking about females in power, because some females, like Margaret Thatcher, is a good example, uh, exercise power in a very masculine style.
You're talking about
So
feminine consciousness power
feminine
in all
consciousness
people.
in all people of all genders and no genders, expressing. And so there's a desire in people who are watching the narcissism that you talked about, that laissez-faire, to say, well, wait a minute, well, wouldn't it be better if companies cared about their employees? Wouldn't it be better if they cared about the environment? Obvious answer, probably yes, right? um, and so can we be a little more compassionate and empathetic? Can we hear what people are thinking and not just tell them, this is the answer. If you don't like it, hit the road. And so it's a trying to execute a shift from a more hierarchical masculine form of power in business and government to a more feminine, inclusive, thoughtful, more aware of impact, more collaborative way of operating. So as we introduce more feminine, at this particular juncture, the masculine looks kind of bad because we've been using it for a long time. And so it's very obvious to people is the negative effects of masculine power. And what seems to be invisible is the positive effects of masculine power. The fact that we're able to do this, the technology was created by hierarchies, right? The hated patriarchy provides our food, and these podcasts and all this other stuff is reliant on systems that were created in that masculine mindset. Are there downsides to it? Absolutely, but there's a lot of upside that we ignore. As the feminine increases, we tend to see the upside and ignore the downside. And here's the interesting one. There's a shadow feminine. The shadow masculine is very obvious right now. The shadow feminine is very hidden. The shadow feminine has to do not with inclusion, but with exclusion. Who are we talking to? Who are we not talking to? Who's in, who's out? Think of junior high school girls, right? Junior high school boys are acting out the dark masculine, bullying, taking someone's lunch money, beating them up after school. The girls are acting out the dark feminine in all these alliances and cliques and shifting stuff and, character assassination, right? There are middle school kids who have committed suicide because of character assassination on social media.
Correct.
The suicide rate in adolescent girls has increased fourfold in
Hmm.
the last 10 years or so. It's
Yes.
an extraordinary spike. And so we've got all this going on, but it's not just going on with the adolescent girls, it's going on with men and women as adults who are practicing this more masculine style. You also get the shadow along with it.
Yes.
And so cancel culture, I would argue, is an expression of this shadow feminine.
Hmm. Cancel culture is shadow feminine, regardless of whether it's showing up in people who think they're left leaning or right leaning. It knows no bounds politically.
Correct.
And what I'll say as we move toward wrapping up this segment is just a quick distillation of two forms of love: masculine consciousness love, golden masculine consciousness in all people is challenging energy. It's the energy,
Mhm.
it's loving through challenging people. And feminine consciousness in all people, love in feminine consciousness is nurturing people. Well, here's the thing: nurturance without challenge leads to narcissism and entitlement, and challenge without nurturance leads to shame and dominance.
Mhm.
And that's where we have the growth edge, which is to combine the golden expressions of masculine and feminine consciousness, which we'll get into, I'm sure, in the next segment. So after another short break, we will get to the heart of the matter, what to look for in a solution that makes it possible to exit from having been targeted in the toxic spiral of cancel culture. I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we'll continue momentarily. And we're back. Before the break, my guest, who is trailblazing the process of uncanceling canceled leaders and influencers and others, Tim Kelley, and I delved into a couple of the less recognized but vitally important root causes of cancel culture. And as I mentioned in this segment, we'll reveal ingredients to look for when you've been canceled and want to come back better than ever. So, Tim, what ingredients should canceled leaders and other canceled folks look for when they've been canceled and want to come back better than ever?
Yeah. So it's tough because the folks doing the canceling often seem to imagine it and set it up as something permanent, right? That once you're canceled, there's no way back, which I think is a problem. There's very few people who've been who have been canceled who I think deserve to remain canceled for the rest of their lives. Like think about prison terms, right? There are certain crimes you can commit where you're put away forever, but that's the exception. The rule is it's some limited period of time and then you get back out again and you're invited back into society. Cancel culture doesn't seem to have learned that trick, which is how do we provide a pathway back? What does the person have to do so that they're no longer cast out of the tribe? And so, because of that, you have to find your own way back. So, there's a couple things going on that make this difficult. One is that the folks doing the canceling are often demanding certain things, like they demand that you confess, they demand that you apologize. And that could be true even if you haven't done the thing you're being accused of, which creates a real problem. A lot of people who are being canceled, many of my clients, haven't done the thing they're being accused of. Now, some of them have, but even in those cases, they need a pathway back in most cases. So the other complicating factor is that being canceled is traumatizing. We are herd animals, we're social creatures, and we spent about 1 million years operating in small tribes before we started doing what we're doing now. And so our psyche equates being cast out of the tribe with death for good reason, evolutionarily. And so when the tribe is canceling you, those those lower parts of the brain are going, oh no, we're going to die. And so it's actually very traumatic. And those people are rarely treated for that trauma. And that makes it harder for them to engage in the behaviors that they have to engage in order to find their way back in.
Okay, let's unpack these. So, first of all, the the way back has to be crafted by essentially by the canceled people because the the ones who are doing the canceling don't see
Do
that
not
they're
provide a path.
doing anything wrong and they're not providing a path. And that's because there is no differentiation between when someone got canceled because they actually have evil intent, sinister intent, which that should be canceled permanently,
Mhm.
versus people who got canceled because of what I refer to as loving mistakes. They had loving intention and were mistaken in the way they expressed that intention
Use the
or
wrong word, for
used the
example.
wrong word, did the wrong behavior. I have an old saying about leaders. Leaders lead at the level of their self development limitations despite their highest intentions. And so when the cancelers don't differentiate between those who were canceled because they actually are sinister, which is the
And have
minority,
committed repeated crimes and not been held accountable for them.
right, which is the minority,
Right?
and those who have been canceled because of loving mistakes or self-development gaps, which is the majority, when they don't
Correct.
do that differentiation.
Or have done nothing at all and are being accused of something that did not actually occur. That's the
Right.
other situation.
And I'm gonna say something a little bit further about that, Tim, because it's so important, in the way of personal experience with this, not in business, but in my family growing up. My father was a rageaholic.
Mhm.
And he would he only did it behind closed doors. He was beloved in the community, and when he would cancel my mother or my brother or me, by not talking to us for prolonged periods, most often weeks, but not infrequently months. When he would start talking again, there was this big don't talk rule, like we're never going to discuss how that happened, or make plans for handling future similar situations better than we knew how to in the past. And he always expected an apology, even when there was no apology to provide.
Mhm. Right, when there was no offense, but you
No
still had to
offense
apologize.
done.
Right.
Right.
Mhm. Yep.
And, so that's, just to bring it down to a human level so that
Right.
people can plug into it more. And the other has to do with cancellation trauma. Cancel trauma is a big deal, and it's being undertreated in people who have been canceled. And if they're still locked in the trauma of having been canceled, they're not equipped, they're not internally resourced at a level they need to be in order to come back from the cancellation even
Yep.
better, even stronger, even more effective so
That's
that the
right. Some of them have
cancellation can be undone.
PTSD, they're not sleeping at night, like they're really they're unraveling, some of these people. So, you know more than I do about how to treat trauma, but there's things you can do for trauma. The key is that they don't realize that they need it, and the people around them don't either, right? Because they weren't hit by a car, they weren't shot, they weren't raped. Like, no, no, it's traumatic. So that's the first step. The other steps, David, is they need to reinvent themselves. So that the way to get out from under a cancellation is to become a different leader than the one who was canceled. And you alluded to this earlier when you talked about filling in these developmental gaps, right? So even if they did nothing wrong, or maybe they did, it doesn't matter. They have to evolve anyway. You have to evolve and become a different, better leader who's not the same person who got canceled. And very important, you have to have a higher purpose. This is why I got involved in this thing. You have to have a higher purpose, because people are less likely to cancel you if you are sincerely devoted to making the world a better place in some way and you have a plan. If that's true, people have to weigh in their minds, and they do this only semi-consciously. Well, if we leave this person canceled, then they're not going to fix this thing in the world that we would love to have them fix. So maybe we shouldn't leave them canceled so that they can go do this cool thing, right? And so this requires, though, that this purpose be uncovered, that it be accurate, true, sincere, and you have to be devoted to manifesting it. If all that's true, that actually helps you get out from under cancellation. The other critical thing is what I call an uncancellation narrative, right? There's a narrative about what you did, a narrative about what happened, a narrative about what's wrong. You need another narrative. And the narrative can't be, well, I didn't do that. And it can't be, woe is me, I'm so sorry I did do that. Neither one of those will get you uncanceled. It has to contain elements of accountability, whether you did the thing you're being accused of or not. Here's what I am accountable for. Here's what I did do. It has to include elements of learning. Here's what I've learned as a result of this experience, and here's how I've evolved. And then it has to include the purpose. And here's the world I'm trying to create as a result of this learning and growth experience from being canceled.
Yes. Yes. That's so spot on. And so I'm going to underscore it again. We've got the need for those who've been canceled to heal from cancel trauma so that they become capable of reinventing themselves. And then they need a pathway for evolving into a different leader than the one who was canceled. And the starting place for that and for restoring trust is higher purpose, and then that's followed by a plan. So that this has to do with an uncancellation narrative, a new narrative that's not about, oh, I didn't do that, or woe is me, but it's an accountability narrative. Here's my unintended impacts from the things that I did, and here's how I've grown through this. Here's what I've learned about myself, and about unintended negative impacts. Here's how I've evolved. Here's the world that I want. Here's my higher purpose, my vision for the world that I want, and here's how I want to go about helping that emerge from now on. And
And I
that
hope you'll support me in doing so.
right,
Right.
and that then leads to uh, a request for support, or more specifically, looking for who's looking to support that
Mhm.
in re-engaging them as a leader.
That's right. And some people will continue to try to cancel you no matter what you do. Like their childhood trauma stuff has been triggered. Their reptilian brain is in charge. They're in a reaction, and they're going to go around telling everyone that you're evil and must be destroyed no matter what you do. They're not the ones you have to worry about. You have to worry about all the other people who might be listen to them. And so the most of the people are swayable, convincible one way or the other. And if they see that you're sincere, they see that you're actually devoted to creating a better world, that you're working on yourself, growing and learning from it, they'll give you some latitude and start to ignore the ones who are saying, no, 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 don't let this person come back into the tribe. They're evil and must be destroyed. And they'll start to tune those people out and focus instead on hoping that you'll be successful at your new project of evolving yourself and creating a better world.
Right. So this additional ingredient in what to look for is assistance in how to deal with those who want to keep canceling you even though you've evolved and transformed, and how to engage with and build credibility with those who are willing to outgrow that cancellation narrative.
Yep.
right?
And no one else seems to be able to be doing this, David. Like, it's just not happening. The support that cancel people get are from lawyers and PR people, and that's important support, right? There are some people who need to file defamation lawsuits, and there are people who need to, get have someone get online and advocate for them and stuff in some kind of social media war, and that's very important help. But those types of help don't solve the problem of the canceled leader being traumatized, and they don't help the canceled leader reinvent him or herself and come back out onto the playing field equipped to compete and equipped to do something productive.
Well said. Well said. And so what you're saying is legal and logistical support is good, but it's not enough. No one seems to be providing the growth support for canceled people that
Right.
they need in order to come back better. So after our upcoming break, we'll return for our episode's final segment, during which I'll be asking Tim to reveal how he helps canceled leaders come back stronger than ever based on what to look for in a solution. And with that, we'll go to break momentarily. I'm Dr. David Gruder. This is the Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and we will return shortly. Before the break, Canceled Leader Recovery Catalyst, I just gave you a new title,
Thank you.
Tim Kelley and I discussed ingredients to look for when you want to turn having been canceled into the best thing that's ever happened to you. Not immediately. I'm not saying like as soon as you've been canceled that you should pretend like it's the best thing that
Takes at
happened to
least
you.
a couple months.
Yeah, it takes a little time, but it requires a commitment to turn it into that.
Mhm.
As I already mentioned during the final segment of this episode called Escaping the Toxic Spiral of Cancel Culture Through Reimagined Leadership, Tim will tell us how he does what we suggested in the last segment that you look for. I'll then let you know the best way to start accessing Tim's great wisdom. And after that, he and I will each share the big takeaways we hope you've gained from this episode, followed by my closing comments. So, Tim, how do you help canceled leaders come back stronger than ever?
So I take them through a process. It's called the get back in the game process. I've trademarked it now. Um, and apparently my only competition is some sort of soft drink. So there's no risk of confusion. Um, so the way the get back in the game process works is we start with the trauma, and most canceled leaders are lightly traumatized. They don't have full on PTSD. If they do, then I'm not a therapist, right? I don't have your training, so I can't work with them if they're in severe PTSD. But if they're just kind of mildly thrown off their step, then I can help them. And some of the processes of dealing with the trauma actually provide useful input to the narrative. Interestingly, what the person has felt and experienced are actually very helpful in the uncancellation narrative later in the process. Um, then we find their higher purpose. And as you know, the way I do this is not by sort of speculating about what it is, but by massively increasing their intuition so that they're able to bring information, purpose information up from their unconscious. And we can test it and create very powerful purpose statements for them, which are also part of the uncancellation narrative later in the process. We create a plan for how they're going to manifest that purpose. Sometimes that's very important because their prior career may be dead, right? They may not be able to go back. And in that case, the purpose is even more important because now it creates a pathway forward for them for making a living and having an impact and doing all this other stuff. In many cases, we can get them back into their prior career, not necessarily with the same organization, but doing something similar. Um, but so the higher purpose and the increased intuition serve multiple purposes in this process. They're super useful. And so all of that creates two very important things: a purpose manifestation plan. Here's how I'm going to make the world a better place, and an uncancellation narrative. Here's why you should let me make the world a better place, rather than leave me canceled. And this process takes several months, and sometimes people are in a hurry because they're in the act of being canceled. And then we have to speed it up dramatically. But more often, they don't come to me until they've already tried to prevent it from happening and failed. And then they seek the help. And so now we're uncanceling them retroactively. And so it takes several months to go through all these things, in part because it's a transformational process. And it's easier on the psyche, as you know, David, for transformation to be played out over several months than trying to get the whole thing done in a week. It can be disruptive to try to do it too quickly.
Yes, that's spot on. And what I want to reinforce on your behalf is what you said a little earlier. I too don't know anyone who's really doing this. They they uh, there are those who are talking about how this is important to do, although smaller in number than those who aren't saying that. But
Right.
even those who are saying this is important to do, they don't have a framework. They don't have the chops either to facilitate this in people who are either in the process of being canceled or who have already been canceled, as I refer to that, being bludgeoned into surrender. And so what you've got in your get back in the game process is a very strategic and, in my judgment, sensible framework where you start with trauma healing, which, as you said, in most leaders is usually on the milder side, that doesn't require psychotherapy. And if it does require psychotherapy because it's reached that level, then that becomes part of the process.
There are psychotherapists who
Exactly.
specialize in trauma.
You got it. And then once the trauma healing is well underway, they're free to be helped by you to find their higher purpose through opening up to deeper connection with intuition than they probably have had before now. And then as that higher purpose gets crystallized, then moving from the dream to the plan, which is the plan for manifesting that higher purpose. And that's even more detailed when the person's prior career is dead. But regardless of whether they're going back to the career that they had or not, there needs to be an up-leveled plan for actualizing the purpose. And once that plan is clear, then all of the gifts that have come from recovering from cancellation trauma come into play in helping to craft an uncancellation narrative. And as you said, this entire process ordinarily takes several months. And the only time that it's got to happen faster or more urgently is when someone is in the process of being canceled, but they haven't been fully canceled yet.
Right. And then we can head it off at the pass if we move quickly enough.
Right. So before I share how people can access your wisdom, is there anything else briefly that you wanted to say about your process, or did we summarize it well?
We summarized it well. The thing I'd like to say is that I hope in future versions of society that these pathways are provided by the folks doing the canceling so that some of what I do is no longer necessary. Right? This is a workaround to the fact that most cancellations are designed to be permanent, which I think is usually unfair. And if we can do better as a culture, then these people won't need as much of this type of help.
Right, and that in turn requires increased sophistication, increased discernment on the part of the cancelers to be able to discern between sinister intention, which deserves permanent cancellation, and loving mistakes or self-development gaps.
Even sinister intent in some cases, David,
Yes,
can be redeemed. right?
Yes.
We all have some sinister intent going on, and occasionally it leaks out, right? Like in your father's case. And so even if someone has similar sinister intent, and even if it resulted in something that wasn't a mistake, is intentional harm, if that harm isn't too egregious and the person's sufficiently psychologically healthy, they could be transformed into someone that society could rely on not doing it again.
In fact, sometimes those make the most powerful change agents.
Right.
So, if you've been canceled, Tim can provide you with a path to renewed impact and influence. He'll help you turn the trauma, cancellation trauma, into the catalyst that enables your greatest achievements to ultimately emerge. And so, his home for getting access to his wisdom is canceledleader.com. That's CANCELED leader.com. Canceledleader.com. Did I get that right, Tim?
Absolutely. I spelled it a couple different ways just in case, right? There's the British
Well,
spelling of canceled too, with
I,
the two L's. So
I'm glad you have a forwarder URL when they use the
right.
two L's instead of the one
I
L.
want to help the canceled Brits too, right? That's
That's
legit
right.
spelling.
That's right. Marvelous. Good on you for having that forwarder URL. So, Tim, what very in a single short non-run-on sentence, what's the big takeaway you want people to take from this episode?
This cancel culture is a side effect of positive changes in society, and I hope we make it through to the next level.
Hmm. Right. And um, mine is cancel culture is a symptom of dysfunctional businesses and societies, not something to be indulged or applauded. Canceled leaders in communities, businesses, and government can come back more resiliently and impactfully than ever by implementing what we've discussed in this episode. So, again, if you've been canceled or are in the midst of being in jeopardy of being canceled, Tim can provide you with an unparalleled path to renewed impact and influence. Visit cancelledleader.com for details and to engage his wisdom. Thanks so very much, Tim, for bringing your wisdom to so many and for being here on my show. Is there anything briefly that you want to say in the way of final comments before I do my final comments?
Well, I'm delighted, and you raised an interesting point that I hadn't mentioned before, which is businesses get canceled too, and I also help canceled businesses. But more importantly, I just want to thank you and express my gratitude and how fun it is to talk to someone who understands the nuances of some of these things that I'm throwing out there. Right, I can throw out a term like amygdala, and you'll translate it for the audience. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to be knowing you, and I'm so glad for the work you're doing in the world. And I want to thank all of you who are watching or viewing this for joining me for this episode of Reimagining Humanity's Future and Yours on the X Zone Broadcast Network. This has been Dr. David Gruder, the polymath of human potential and societal psychotherapist who equips leading edge leaders, influencers, and you with impactful resilience that makes it possible for humanity's most spiritually elevated future to at last emerge. I invite you to explore my main website, drgruder.com. That's drgruder.com, where you'll find a link to watch or listen to all of this show's episodes, as well as a link to the Center for Enlightened Self-Sovereignty, which is helping to dissolve divisiveness by reuniting individuals, businesses, nations, and humanity so we can at last usher in the age of what I call spiritual self-sovereignty that serves us all. The world needs you. Your nation needs you. Your loved ones need you. You need you. Boost your impact in helping the future you most want to emerge. I enthusiastically invite you to tune in next time for another spell-busting, uplifting, and actionable episode on how together we can and will build a better future for ourselves and for humanity. And please take to heart what we discussed in this episode. Cancel culture must be canceled. See you on the next episode.